Welcome to today's episode. We're thrilled to welcome Lieutenant Colonel Nick Owen to the podcast. Nick currently serves as Assistant Chief of Police with Louisville Metro Police Department, and he oversees its support bureau, which includes the Major Crimes Division, Criminal Addiction Division, and Special Operations Division. Nick is a Louisville native, has nearly 2 decades with LMPD, and he began his career in the 1st Division in the west end of Louisville. Nick, welcome. Thank you for taking the time. Really appreciate you being here with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
The big question that we have for this conversation is, what should the public know about police interactions with people experiencing homelessness? It's a topic that gets a lot of attention these days. Certainly in my time at St. Vincent de Paul, I learned a lot more about that, but would love to chat with you about that. And I'll start with, really the notion of it being a real challenge to balance public safety while also effectively interacting with the unhoused population and interacting, for the betterment of that particular individual, but also the community as a whole. Public safety is paramount. Talk to how the police department, how LMPD does this effectively.
Well, effectively depends on who you ask, I suppose. But we do our best, and what I like to tell people is we're here to address crime, public disorder, public safety, things of that nature. Not necessarily, we're not here to specifically police, under police, over police, whatever a specific community, whether that's a homeless community or any other demographic for that matter. But to your point, we have to balance public safety, and really it's if there's a crime issue within that community, whether it's a homeless community or a wealthy community, an impoverished community, this, that, whatever community, if there's a crime issue, then that's our responsibility to address that. And we have to strike a balance of, how much interaction we have with individuals versus, what are the public safety concerns, what are the public health concerns, things of that nature. So it really is, it's trying to strike that balance of how much interaction probably isn't even the right word to use, but how much how much time we spend with a given community, whether again homeless or whomever. So that's always kind of a balancing act for us.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine that it's tough because you're probably LMPD is called in on a number of situations in which is it really there's no one else to take the call. And whether or not it's something that an officer is trained to do or not trained to do, I know in the experiences that I've had that clearly, I mean, we all know that, there are folks that suffer from mental health challenges, and a police officer may not necessarily be trained specifically on that, like a social worker or somebody else. So I'm sure that's hard to balance, but when the call comes in and there's no one else to go, and if there's an issue, you guys are called in to go in.
Absolutely. And, I will say, it's, police, we kind of get the short end of the stick quite a bit, but to your point, it's interesting to see how that has changed. Even in my career, I believe I was the first recruit class, my academy class, to actually go through the entire course of CIT training, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but it's crisis intervention training. So, it's
okay.
2 weeks of, just straight mental health and how to provide assistance to folks in mental health crisis. And, I remember, I was a 23, 24-year-old patrolman, to your point, at 2:00 in the morning, providing addiction services to somebody that's homeless or mental health services. And it's kind of one of those things. I look back at it and I was like, what are we doing? But now we are kind of getting away from that and really from a government perspective, recognizing that we need to have the right resources in place at the right time to provide services that maybe the police aren't the best suited to provide. And I think that recognition alone and the commitment, which could always be more, right? Groups are always going to want more investment from the government or from nonprofits or whatever, and that is what it is. However, that is in place, and we do understand that there are different resources that need to be utilized to intervene in different scenarios, whether it's with the homeless population, whether it's with youth when it comes to violence intervention, any number of things. There's a lot of things that historically the police have been asked to do just because we're kind of a catch-all, and we're always here. We always answer the call.
Can you give some examples of those where you all are expected to intervene, and also you mentioned metro government, the current administration. You've been serving in LMPD for over 20 years, and I'm sure you've seen changes. And prior to us starting the podcast, you and I were chatting about some of the improvements and some of the things that you're seeing. You just mentioned that there's some recognition about that with this current administration. If you could talk to some of those changes and how that may be helping, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah. And like you said, we had talked, briefly offline before this, but, credit where credit is due. It really started towards the tail end of the last mayoral administration. And then I believe, Mayor Greenberg has kind of poured a little gasoline on that and really kind of stepped up what we're doing with, diversion programs. And, when you call 911 for an individual or yourself in a mental health crisis, to have somebody answer the phone that is trained to not just recognize, what's going on, but also understand what the appropriate response or the appropriate resource is. And then thirdly, to have those resources in place. That was just not something that existed when I was a patrolman. If somebody was in a mental health crisis and 911 is called, the police are going, whether it's medical, whether it's mental health, whether it's addiction, whether it's behavioral. It's just from a safety standpoint, that was the mindset back then. Even 10 years ago was, no, the police are going. And now we're kind of understanding that, that may not be, the best answer for a particular problem. So having those resources in place is huge. And not just, and selfishly, it takes a burden off the police. But also it's probably better serving the consumer, the person that is experiencing a mental health crisis or an addiction crisis or whatever it may be, homelessness, depression, anything. It's a guy in uniform, a girl in uniform may not be the best response for that person. And I think you're seeing not just in Louisville, but nationwide, a lot of governments are starting to recognize that and not just recognize it, but put resources in place to fix it.
That's a challenge. I mean, because like you said, that balance of public safety and balancing the needs of the individual that's facing the crisis and the community. I can imagine that you're going to have situations where there just isn't the resources that are necessarily for that specific situation, and you're going to have these interactions that, quite frankly, may be unfortunate, but it kind of is what it is in terms of how we can get the right resources at the right time. That's got to be extraordinarily difficult.
Very, yeah, it is. And, and to your point, I mean, yeah, are there going to be scenarios where we have policemen interact with a member of the homeless community and it does not go well? Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, but all we can commit to is, if our officers did something wrong, or if there was a lapse in training, or if there's something we can do to prevent that going forward, then we'll do it. But that doesn't ring true just for the homeless population. I mean, I like to think I know we get it right far more than we get it wrong, but yeah, there are times, I mean, in any profession where somebody's going to get something wrong. It happens. Do we the question is, do we learn from it or not? If we don't learn from it, then I'm not doing my job. If we do learn from it, good. We'll make a training note of it, and we'll make sure we do everything we can to prevent it from happening again. But yeah, to your point, I mean, these are some difficult scenarios to be asked to intervene in, but 100%.
It's interesting. My career was more on the business side, consulting, accounting, auditing, tax, those kinds of things. And I'm not trying to draw an analogy to policing, but we had, a process in which we were serving, our clients, and sometimes the service, there was failures, there was things that went wrong, and there was this constant kind of improvement cycle where you kind of go with, you see what the situation is, you see where the things went wrong, you address where the things went wrong, you provide training, and you hope that that loop starts to improve. It sounds like there's something similar that you have within policing as well. I mean, you kind of
Yep,
step back
very.
to learn from.
Yep, very, very, very similar. I mean, almost exactly. I mean, that's exactly how that plays out. And like I said, I know we get it right more than we get it wrong, but just like anybody else, there's times where we're going to get something wrong, and we just have to learn from it and move on.
What the police departments in various jurisdictions across the country, you all don't write the laws,
No,
right? I mean,
no.
it's the
That's
legislature. It's
the
the
state
legislature,
legislature.
right?
Correct.
So the
Correct.
state legislature or the local uh, metro council or whatever it's called in the different communities establish the laws, and you all are expected to be out and police and recognize and cite and arrest folks or whatever the case may be for breaking the law, kind of thing. And there's been a lot of discussion since the House Bill House Bill 5 came out that had within it a number of laws, but there was a particular section in there, relating to homelessness and all those kinds of things. And there's just lots of conversations around it. And all that we're talking about here, it kind of deals with those interactions that come up. Um, I guess I'm just looking for you to just comment on that and the challenges that you have. I want the public to understand that that's not easy,
Right.
especially when you're trying to balance public safety with the safety of the individual and the safety of folks in the community.
Right. And one of the ways, and I don't have the numbers. I know we have cited individuals under House Bill 5. I don't know how many. I don't know. I don't believe it's super prevalent. One of the things I would tell people is, you know, I would like our officers, and I think most of them do, to view that as just another tool, right? It's there are certain laws that the legislature passes where the police, our hands are tied. For example, domestic violence. If I come to the scene of an altercation between a husband and wife or any romantic couple or father and son, mother, daughter, whatever the case may be, if there's violence, I have to arrest somebody. And there's a few examples of that. The rest of it, one of the great things about this job is there's a great deal of discretion, right? So even with House Bill 5, it is not we can get into the weeds a little bit, but from a legal standpoint, if it's something that I have to intervene in, it's what we call a shall arrest. The law will say you shall do A, you shall do B, you shall do C, whatever. The camping ordinance, or not ordinance, the camping law, it's really kind of a last resort. It's kind of another tool in the officer's toolbox. Hopefully, we can get resources to an individual before the officer even has to come to the scene. That's the ultimate goal. So yeah, I mean it's another tool. I don't think it's something that's being used very often. But yeah, I mean it is the law, and we are expected to enforce the law that's passed by the legislature. But there is a certain degree of discretion that comes with that as well. It's the same as not the same, but I on the Gene Snyder this morning at 7:45, and I might have gone 68 and 65. You know what I mean? It's there's always a degree of discretion there. So that's kind of as people have asked me about my thoughts on that, or what the effects of that are. That's kind of how I equate it to. It's another tool in the officer's toolbox that's available to them should it come to that point. Hopefully, we have enough intervention before that it just never even comes to that.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I our listeners know that I'd spent close to 3 years at St. Vincent de Paul, and learned so much more about our community in terms of the homeless population, and others, just quite frankly, that are facing so many different challenges. Uh, at St. Vincent de Paul, at any given night, we're housing about 400 folks on the Shelby Park campus off of Preston and Kentucky. And, these are folks that are in emergency shelter, transitional shelter, as well as permanent supportive housing. And the reality is, when you look at our community and you look at the fact that there still are folks on the street, there's not enough shelter space. They're full every night.
Right.
And so it's almost perpetuating a challenge. I mean, if there's no place for folks to go, and I'll be the first to say that when there's a lot of myths out there about folks that are on the street, saying that, well, they want to be there, they don't want to be in a shelter, and I'd be the first to say, well, have you talked to them to really make that broad brush judgment, right?
Oh, I completely agree. With the resources and all of that, and I probably should have said, at the onset, it's important to frame the conversation around police and homelessness, and I probably didn't set it up the way I should have. We don't. Basically, all we're there for, everybody has a right to feel safe, whether you're in the East End, whether you're in the West End, whether you're in a homeless camp, whether you're at a campground, it doesn't matter. Like that's what we're there for, right? And we spoke about it earlier. A lot of times, especially in the past, we have gotten away from our job is just making sure you feel safe or that you are safe, to our job is to figuring out where you're going to sleep at night. And that's two different things. And there may be a time where that is part of our job. And it has been part of my job in the past, helping people, get placement. But at the end of the day, that's what we're there for, is we want people to feel safe, whether you're homeless or not, whether you're rich or you're poor, whether, whoever. When you lay down at night, you have a right to feel safe. And that's what
Right.
what we need to be doing.
Well, I appreciate, I appreciate what you're saying, Nick, and I think it's important for our community to understand that you have that understanding as well. It's a hard job, and I appreciate, for one, and I'll say this on behalf of our listeners as well, that we appreciate your service and your colleagues' service to our community. I can only imagine, really, because I've never been in your shoes, how extraordinarily difficult it is to do your job and to do it well, and to keep yourself safe also, for your sake and your family's sake. And I appreciate that. I really do. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you. And also, I mean, and I'm not just saying this. Having been around, 15, 20 years, having worked downtown, and seeing the homeless, what was going on with homeless individuals in 2007, 2008, 2010, whenever, versus what it is now. I'm encouraged. I think that, not encouraged in the sense that, we have made a substantial dent into the homeless population. I don't think we have. However, I am encouraged by the government and nonprofit response that was there when I was a young patrolman, but not to the extent that it is now, and not with the understanding of, I'm beating a horse a little bit here, but with the understanding that a lot of the things that we asked the police to do back then, but not even just the police, really EMS, the fire department,
Mhm.
whoever that we were asking them to do just 10, 15 years ago, we have come to the realization that no, there's probably other people that are better trained, better suited, better equipped to deal with whatever is going on with this community or with this person. And we're starting to get those puzzle pieces into place. That's why I'm encouraged.
Yeah,
And that's selfishly, that's because that's the only piece of this puzzle I affect. The police department is not in the business of affordable housing. The police department is not in the business of, nonprofit funding. We are in the business of who shows up where in the middle of the night. And
right.
so we can affect that. And from that little tiny piece of the pie that I have, I am encouraged. And I think, what we're doing now is way better than what we did years ago. And
Right.
I think that is reason for encouragement.
Like you said, it's not LMPD's job to build more shelter space. And so as the nonprofits and metro government work more and more together to do this, we're going to see more positive outcomes. I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. And it's really interesting for you to be able to see, you know, almost 20 years of this, because the past does inform the future. And I'm encouraged to you know see the longevity that you've had in your career. And again, thank you for that. Um, because you can bring so much to the table in terms of, well, this is the way it was being done, and now it's
Yeah,
being done this way, and there's improvements, and we're going to continue to improve. Recognize that we need to continue to improve every day.
right.
Everybody,
100%. Yeah.
everybody,
Yep.
everybody. Well, Nick, I appreciate your time. I know you're very busy. Thank you so much, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. And the partnership that St. Vincent de Paul has with LMPD is so important to what we're doing at our campus. And if you haven't if you haven't visited recently what we're doing there, would love to have you stop by and take a look, because it really is a model of a place that provides comprehensive services, that does its best to get folks that are on the street and in really dire situations to get back on their feet and be permanently housed, which reduces what everyone has to do.
That is true. That is true. And thank you. Thank you for having me. I do appreciate it.